She was really serious about her job, and she loved her dog. She took Boogie everywhere with her.
Are we going to PetSmart? You're gonna go play?
She sent me a text and she was like, "Hey S, if anything happens," and I was like, "Something's wrong."
Everyone was watching this case. It's a missing woman, but also it's a missing veteran.
She knew she was being videotaped, and she's leaving breadcrumbs.
It looked like maybe she was carjacked, maybe somebody pulled her out of her vehicle, maybe she was kidnapped.
A murder case is tough as it is, but a no-body murder case kind of is in a different league. You're looking at this person's actual final moments. It just strikes at your heart.
San Diego, California, September 2017. 37-year-old Julia Jacobson is a woman on the move.
Julia was very hardworking, very driven, determined, focused. She had goals, and there was not going to be anybody that was going to get in the way of those goals.
When Julia was in her early 20s, she joined the Army after serving in the ROTC in college, and she quickly rose to the rank of captain.
Julia was one of my classmates and battle buddies in ROTC. A lot of times in the military, you'll find people that are very type A, but almost to a toxic fault. And Julia was never that. She was very centered, very grounded. She wasn't going to push you down.
I met Julia when we were serving with the 39th Finance Battalion in Germany. We were the same age. But of course, she was an officer, I was enlisted. That just goes to show you how dedicated and driven she is. One thing about Julia that I really admire is she will not let you fail. She will always make sure that you succeed.
And those qualities prove invaluable for Julia, who served 2 tours of duty as a finance officer in Iraq.
Our mission in Iraq was to fund the outlying bases, and we would transfer large sums at a time by air. Julia put together a great team, and we all know our duties. Everything was very coordinated. Dangerous, yes, but we knew what we were getting into.
In Iraq, every place that you went was dangerous. And Julia, transporting large sums of money, had to be brave and had to be focused on the job at hand. Her with her wads of money. This is the Julia that I know and loved. Just soldier. I'm sure she is rolling before this picture is taken. That smile.
After her discharge from the Army in 2009, at the age of 29, Julia transitioned seamlessly from military to corporate work, climbing the ranks of the accounting division at the 7-Eleven Corporation.
I met Julia through work, and we became really best friends. Right away, she just wanted to help me become successful with the company. She was really serious about her job, and she loved her dog.
Are we going to PetSmart? You're gonna go play?
She took Boogie everywhere with her, and Boogie loved going to PetSmart. When I first met her, I went to her house with my dog, and it turned into about a 3-hour play date with our dogs. I was thinking like, man, this girl got this dog all over the place. This dog is out of control. Boogie stood on the coffee table. And I was like, your dog is on the coffee table. And she was like, it's okay. It's just Boogie.
Julia's devotion to her career leaves her little time for romance. But in 2015, she meets Dalen Ware.
I believe she met him on a contracted job on site of one of the 7-Eleven locations that she was working, overseeing. Julia was very personal and private, and she hadn't had a lot of partners either. He told her she was beautiful, so there was automatically a connection there. Dalen was her real intimate partner.
After a year and a half, Julia and Dalen elope to Las Vegas.
She was like, we got married in the drive-thru on the strip. And then she just thought it was so funny. I was like, you serious?
Julia puts her heart and soul into the marriage. But after several months, her busy work life leads to tension in the relationship.
She said, well, every time I travel, he'll wait till I leave and then call and be like, you're always leaving me. You didn't tell me when we got married that you wouldn't be available. You didn't tell me that I'd be in this house by myself. You're not giving me the attention that I need.
It got very, very tense, and you could just read the people's faces, and you're just like, this is not a good situation.
I just didn't like him, didn't like the vibe.
The conflict grows, and soon Julia feels she has no choice but to file for divorce.
She called me and she was like, I'm done, Chanel. I cannot do this. I'm done. That was the first time I saw her cry. And it was a hurtful cry. And I was like, Julia, I don't think this guy is the right one for you.
The failure of her marriage is a disappointment. But within a year of her divorce, by the summer of 2017, Julia is ready to move on with her life.
She texted me one day and she's like, I met somebody, and she had met this guy named John. He was military, coming from a divorce from the East Coast, and he's in San Diego. She was like, he's nice, he's cool. I liked it. I liked the happiness. I liked the tone, the laughter.
On September 2nd, 2017, Julia sets out early from her home in San Diego for a road trip into the desert.
It was Labor Day weekend, and Julia was gonna just go have a fun weekend, enjoy having some time off.
I texted her on Friday and I was like, hey, what's going on? She texts me and goes, I'm with a friend. So that's all she sent, and I was like, oh, she got an attitude. I'm thinking she was with John. And she sent me a text and she was like, on my way to Big Bear. And I was like, was Boogie with her? And she was like, yes. Now, every time Julia has had a road trip, we will talk on the phone the whole time. 2-3 hours, no matter how long it was, her and I be on the phone the whole time. So that's all she sent, and I was like, something's wrong.
A short time later, Chanel receives a troubling set of texts from Julia.
Hey, S, if anything happens, she didn't say anything. So I just sent the question mark. And she goes, call my sister. And I was like, hey, what's going on? She didn't answer. And that was the last time we texted each other.
Later that weekend, when Julia's family doesn't hear from her, they also start to worry.
Julia had a very close relationship with her family, and she connected with them every day. When she didn't call on her daily call and then connect with her sister as well, they thought something was strange. That's when they started posting on social media to try to locate her, and then ultimately, a day or two after the holiday weekend, they called the San Diego Police Department to make a missing persons report.
On September 6th, the San Diego Police Department opens an investigation.
Julia had been missing a day and a half. My heart sank because that's not her. And you dread it because I didn't want to be negative about that and think, oh, something's happened to her. But I knew that something very tragic had happened.
Security camera footage helps narrow the search for Julia.
Was this going to turn out the way that everyone wanted, or was this going to take a darker turn?
And investigators uncover critical clues.
They came in separate cars and checked into the hotel.
I believe there was some kind of cadaver odor present inside of that vehicle.
At this point, all the arrows were pointing at him.
September 6th, 2017. It's the first day of the investigation into Julia Jacobson's disappearance.
Julia's friends rallied to support her almost immediately. And the fact of the matter is, they pushed this to such an extent that it was so unusual for somebody to be missing for 1 day or 2 days and to have the police react this quickly to start the investigation. And it was unique from my experience in 20 years of doing this stuff.
Investigators start the subpoena process for Julia's emails and online accounts. Meanwhile, San Diego police conduct a search of her apartment, where they find no signs of forced entry or a struggle. Next, detectives want to speak with those closest to Julia, starting with her new boyfriend, John, to see if he had been traveling with her that weekend.
On our radar very immediately was the relationship that Julia had just developed with a new person.
But John tells investigators he was not on the Labor Day weekend trip with Julia, and he hasn't seen her since.
Our first suspect is usually the closest person to the victim, especially when it's an intimate relationship. But we were able to check other things, including cell phone information, text messages, and so forth. So we were able to pretty quickly eliminate him as a suspect, or at least put him down a few tiers.
Julia's weekend travel companion is still a mystery, so investigators expand the circle of people they talk to, including Julia's ex-husband, Dalen Ware.
During the course of that day, Dalen Ware, he had been contacted by detectives just to see if he had known anything about where Julia was.
Dalen Ware told authorities that he hadn't seen Julia in about a year, and they had an amicable divorce. Everything was copacetic. It was fine. He lives in Arizona, so that's a pretty great alibi for him. So police weren't suspicious of him.
Desperate to learn what's happened to Julia, her friends and family launch their own search.
Julia doesn't disappear like that. Her sisters were even asking me, you think that she just wants to get away? But I was like, no, she's never going to just go somewhere and disappear and put everybody through that.
At that point, we really need to get rocking and rolling to get whatever evidence that we can get.
The San Diego Police Department organizes a team of digital investigators led by Peter Villiver to try to pinpoint Julia's whereabouts.
We have a 37-year-old military vet gone missing from San Diego, and our task was to locate her. I specialize in cell phone tracking. That's what I was enlisted for. So the investigators, parallel to my review of the call detail records, also were able to acquire financial transactions. It's not immediate, but when we parallel the two together, it gives us a better picture of her general whereabouts.
Investigators issue an alert to be on the lookout for Julia's car.
Her vehicle had the service that allows us to locate it, but it's very limited because it's not an active OnStar service, but we were able to identify where she stopped at a 7-Eleven in the Tierra Santa neighborhood of San Diego.
Police visit the 7-Eleven store and ask to review its surveillance footage. They spot Julia in the video on the morning of September 2nd, just a few hours before her friends and family last hear from her.
Well, when I look at that footage of Julia in the 7-Eleven, she's obviously trying to select some items and then doesn't select the items and just leaves the store without purchasing anything. We don't know why she was doing that.
Yep. That's Julia. Shorts and flip-flops. She's got her purse with her. To me, she does not look like she's concerned about anything. She's just looking like she's going on a small road trip.
Then, on September 7th, 5 days after Julia was last seen, police make a troubling discovery close to Julia's home in San Diego.
Julia's car is actually found parked a couple blocks from her house. Strangely, the keys were in the ignition, the windows were down, and Julia's purse was left in the car.
Julia always locked her doors, never left her windows rolled down. So I was like, it's not good.
So it looked like maybe she was carjacked, maybe somebody pulled her out of her vehicle, maybe she was kidnapped. That was a major red flag for authorities.
"5 days after Julia Jacobson was last seen, authorities discover her car abandoned on a street near her home in San Diego.
Julia's car was recovered down in San Diego with the windows down and the keys in the ignition, but strangely, nobody apparently disturbed it.
Police impound the vehicle, a white SUV that Julia is believed to have been driving on her Labor Day weekend road trip. News of the discovery heightens interest in Julia's case across the region.
There's a push on social media to try to raise awareness. And I remember the weight of it. And it was an important story in our newsroom and for other newsrooms throughout a huge part of Southern California. And there's still a feeling of hopefulness. She became a recognizable face around the region. Those missing person signs were everywhere.
By the morning of September 8th, the mystery of Julia Jacobson's disappearance is growing deeper with each passing hour.
You've got police coming together from all of Southern California. Was this going to turn out the way that everyone wanted, or was this going to take a darker turn?
Our suspicions are pretty clear here what's going on. I was convinced Julia was dead, and I think the police were too.
In their search for more definitive answers, investigators are trying to track Julia's movements using her electronic data. It's a slow process. The information is trickling in gradually, in chronological order, a single day at a time.
With Julia Jacobson's case, we were about 72 hours behind every time we move. So we would find something that occurred 72 hours prior as we progressed the investigation.
Julia's cell phone data reveals that she took an odd path before she vanished. And it's a long way from where she told Chanel she was headed. According to credit card records, 12 hours after she was at a 7-Eleven in San Diego, she stopped in another 7-Eleven store. This one 100 miles north in Ontario, California.
If you're not in California and you don't understand the geography here, Ontario is nowhere near Big Bear. So it's incredibly unusual that somebody who says they're en route to Big Bear is suddenly in Ontario. It's like a 90-minute drive at least. It makes no sense.
Once again, detectives are able to identify Julia in the surveillance footage. And again, Julia's behavior in the store raises questions for the investigators.
We see her on the 2 videos, and she goes in, she looks around, she touches a few items. She knows, having worked at that corporation, that you go into that store, you're on a video camera. This is a highly intelligent, sophisticated woman. To me, as an investigator, I'm looking at that and saying, she knew she was being videotaped, and she's leaving breadcrumbs for any investigator if something ever happens to her. And it just makes you wonder why she was doing it.
And there's no explanation for why Julia strayed so far from her stated destination. No hint of her current whereabouts, and no way to even know if she is alive or dead. So police decide to take a new approach to the case.
Somebody in the detective bureau had the idea of having a cadaver dog involved. This dog is trained to smell cadavers. We had the San Bernardino sheriff cadaver dog travel down to San Diego to the San Diego Police Department's evidence holding facility, which was essentially a parking lot.
It's the parking lot where Julia's abandoned vehicle is being held for evidence.
They had impounded her vehicle, and I brought my cadaver dog down to see if there was any cadaver odor associated with this vehicle. The vehicle was in a secure police lockup, so what I did was release the dog inside the locked storage facility where I think there was 5 cars total, and I had no idea whose vehicle was the victim's vehicle. Canine Ellie immediately circled all the vehicles and then really started detailing a smaller white SUV. I could see that she only had interest in that one vehicle and one vehicle only.
It's Julia's white Chevrolet Equinox.
She wouldn't leave it alone, and she refused to leave that area. I was able to open the rear tailgate. Ellie hopped right in and was almost going crazy, sniffing the ceiling upholstery and the upholstery of the seats in the rear cargo area. There was nothing we could see, but I interpreted Ellie's behavior as a positive for some kind of cadaver odor on the inside of this vehicle.
Investigators can now only assume the worst.
Our suspicions were no longer suspicions. We knew. We knew that Julia was dead.
A week after Julia Jacobson was reported missing, a cadaver dog finds indications that a dead body has been in her car.
She was only looking for cadaver. That is the only detection odor that she's imprinted on. Now, there was nothing visible that we could see, but she had definitely detected something there.
The missing person case is now likely a homicide, but the investigation hasn't turned up any suspects. As her best friend Chanel tries to make sense of what might have happened, she can't stop rereading the final text messages she received from Julia.
If anything happens to me, call my sister. So that plays in my head over and over again. Something wasn't right. Julia's very detailed, so she never would send me a short text like that.
Chanel can't help but wonder about the mysterious friend with whom Julia was traveling.
And I started realizing if she had Boogie with her, the only person that would be around was Dalen.
Julia's ex-husband, Dalen Ware, has already been interviewed by police, who believe he was hundreds of miles away in Arizona that weekend. But Chanel isn't buying it.
Boogie only liked certain people. She loved Julia, she loved Dalen, and she loved my dog and me. So whenever Julia would go traveling, only people that can watch Boogie would be me or Dalen. I think she never stopped really talking to him. So I finally was like, I bet you she met up with Dalen.
Chanel reaches out to the San Diego police with her revelation, but they tell her there's nothing in the investigation pointing to Dalen Ware.
They kept on saying they're interviewing other people. I was like, please look into it.
When the subpoena for Julia's computer records finally comes through, investigators start digging through her emails in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, and they suddenly begin to share Chanel's suspicions. They discover dozens of hostile and threatening messages, sometimes as many as 15 a day, sent to Julia from Dalen Ware.
So here's one email from Dalen Ware to Julia. He wrote, "It could have been so easy. Just apologize and tell the truth. But you want to be evil and run and hide and hurt me worse. Wrong move, mother. Last message. You're going to regret this, you dumb B-word. You got off easy before, but not this time," with a couple of exclamation marks. It's pretty aggressive. It's pretty horrifying.
Julia's friend Chanel is not surprised. Julia has told her that her ex isn't happy that she's got a new boyfriend.
He was livid about this guy, John. Oh, he was livid. You know, he hated that she was with him and that she was happy.
But why would Julia have met up again with Dalen and keep it a secret from her friends?
I think that everyone, men, women, everyone, we have told little white lies or withheld some details from people in our lives to either protect ourselves or protect them from the truth. I think it's pretty common to withhold a few details because you know that you're going to get the wrath of your girlfriend or your mom or your sister who doesn't think you should still be hanging out with so-and-so.
With a possible motive, anger at Julia's new relationship, investigators begin taking another look at Dalen. As they do, a new credit card transaction posts to Julia's account, prompting a breakthrough discovery.
So through the records that I reviewed on the evening of the 2nd, we were able to locate where she stayed at in the general vicinity. And then at that point, the investigators were able to specifically identify the hotel that she was staying at. It was a hotel off of Interstate 10 in Ontario, which was the DoubleTree Hotel.
Investigators immediately contact the DoubleTree Hotel to review their guest registry. It confirms that Julia booked a room for 2 nights, starting on September 2nd. Detectives also acquire the hotel's security footage.
When they go back and they look at video footage from the hotel in Ontario, they see Dalen Ware with Julia Jacobson.
They came in separate cars and checked into the hotel.
We saw Julia walk in at about 9:46 p.m. with the suspect and with Boogie, and she was never seen leaving the property moving forward.
That's the last picture we have of Julia. You can't help but think, what is going through this young person's mind? It's inescapable as a human being. You never know when your time is going to come, but you're looking at this person's actual final moments, and it just strikes at your heart.
Investigators in California believe Julia Jacobson was murdered during a road trip on Labor Day weekend. And they now have proof that her ex-husband, Dalen Ware, was with her on the day she went missing.
Now, there was enough evidence to then go back to Dalen Ware and start questioning him. And that's when he changed his tune.
He confirmed that he had been with her. He called it the last hurrah. He knew that this was the last time she was moving on to something, and there was something that was going to be breaking or changing in their relationship.
But Dalen firmly denies harming Julia in any way.
He then explained to the police that he left her on September 4th and they mutually departed from the DoubleTree Hotel, and that they're both moving on in different directions of their lives.
Detectives are skeptical. Dalen is now their prime murder suspect.
At this point, all the arrows were pointing at him. Our suspicions are pretty clear here what's going on here, but do we have enough to file a murder case? Not yet. We had to have more.
Knowing that Dalen was with Julia at the hotel, the investigators begin tracing his moves through cell phone data and financial transactions, as they have been doing with Julia. As the records come in, a disturbing picture emerges of Dalen's activity in the day and a half after they checked in, beginning shortly before 1 a.m. on the morning of September 3rd.
So those early morning hours of September 3rd, Dalen Ware went to the Walmart store in Corona and purchased a number of items. One of those was a 50-gallon tub, some black sheets, a shovel, and some bleach. But then he went to another Walmart and he purchased another series of items. One was some kind of wrapping cord and kerosene. He's going to 2 different locations in the middle of the night to purchase these items, and we know something is going on here. In law enforcement, we call that a murder kit.
Then Dalen returns to the DoubleTree Hotel in the early morning hours.
About 4 o'clock in the morning, hotel surveillance videos Dalen Ware getting one of the hotel dollies from the lobby back to the room. And about 15-20 minutes later, the same individual pushing the dolly was seen with what appears to be containers towards the parking lot.
We have surveillance footage of Dalen leaving the DoubleTree, and he loaded a 50-gallon tote on the luggage cart and then put some items to kind of obscure the tote onto the luggage cart, and then he took that and loaded it into Julia's car. At no point do we see Julia.
After loading the items into Julia's car, Dalen is seen returning to the room, where he remains until about 5 p.m. on September 3rd.
So at this point, Dalen Ware again went to another same big box retail facility. This time he went west towards West Covina.
Credit card records show he purchases additional storage bins, as well as kerosene, football receiver gloves, and other items. In the early evening of September 3rd, Dalen returns to the DoubleTree Hotel.
6:43 p.m., there was a swipe card transaction on the key. So he was in the property of DoubleTree in Ontario.
Dalen is captured on video leaving the hotel for the last time in the early morning hours of September 4th. Julia's dog Boogie is with him now, and they drive off in Julia's car. But there's still no sign of Julia. Investigators are able to roughly track the car's movements using the vehicle's OnStar system.
At 6:37 a.m., the OnStar showed a location off of Interstate 10 at Washington Street, which is in Palm Desert area. When the detectives went there, they went to 2 different gas stations and said, hey, can we look at video surveillance on or about this time? And lo and behold, the detectives was able to capture a video surveillance of the suspect and the victim's vehicle in a car wash.
And what we have is surveillance footage of Dalen in the back of Julia's car taking out those 50-gallon totes and taking the car wash not to wash the car, but to wash the totes out. He puts the totes back in the car, and then they proceed further west down to San Diego, where the car is abandoned a couple blocks from Julia's house.
The detectives find more images of Dalen on surveillance video. On the evening of September 4th, they see him near where Julia's abandoned car was found.
We have Dalen walking from the general location of the car, ultimately to a Denny's location, where Dalen got into that taxi cab and had the taxi cab drive him all the way back up to Ontario, another 100 miles, and drop him off at a location of a Motel 6, which was directly across the street from the DoubleTree Hotel. So he was caught on the camera at the Motel 6 getting out of the taxi cab, and then apparently walked across the street and retrieved his car, which had remained in the DoubleTree parking lot this whole time. And then we know that he traveled east again back to his home in the Phoenix area.
The case for bringing murder charges against Dalen Ware now appears strong, but there is one key weakness.
A murder case is tough as it is, but a no-body murder case kind of is in a different league. And so you have to be able to paint the picture of the sequence of events and where this all leads. And the loose end we had was we didn't have proof that somebody was deceased or murdered. So we knew we had to have some proof that she was not just missing.
On October 13th, 2017, nearly a month and a half since Julia went missing, San Bernardino County prosecutors make a calculated gamble.
Dalen Ware was arrested in his home in Arizona and brought to San Bernardino County to face murder charges. So we filed it as a first-degree murder case, knowing full well this would be a challenge. We knew we had to find Julia.
Dalen Ware has been arrested for the murder of his ex-wife, Julia Jacobson. It's devastating news for her family and friends who've been desperately searching for her.
My feelings were so hurt. That's all I can remember, is that I knew it. You know, I knew that he had something to do with it. And even though they arrested him, I was trying to convince myself that, you know, maybe she's still alive somewhere.
Prosecutors have a challenging job ahead of them. Without a body, proving that Julia has been killed will not be easy. In late October 2017, authorities from multiple agencies begin a massive search for Julia's remains.
We know that the OnStar device tracked them to an exit off the 10 freeway in Riverside County.
Based on that OnStar data, investigators narrow the search area to a 6-mile radius of rough, arid terrain.
It took a lot of people coming together to try to find her. 120 people out there with these search parties, searching this 6-mile radius, which is huge in the desert.
But after weeks of searching, they still can't find Julia.
We didn't have that information, and the only person that we could get it from was Dalen Ware. I proceeded to start negotiating with the defense attorney for Mr. Ware, and I kind of gave him an ultimatum with some incentives, and ultimately we agreed to enter a plea deal with Dalen Ware for second-degree murder.
On December 1st, 2017, Dalen Ware agrees to help investigators find Julia's body.
He took us out to the location in that Date Palm area in a very remote part of the desert.
Investigators enlist Deputy Sheriff David Moyer and his canine Ellie to help search. The same dog and handler that detected the odor of a dead body in Julia's car.
As soon as I let Ellie out of the car, she took off into the desert at a dead run. And we're running way out into the desert. And sure enough, Canine Ellie went to it like a laser. There was an area in the desert I could see with a tremendous amount of animal disturbance, and the very first thing I could see from a distance was a pink dog harness that had been pulled out of a shallow hole.
We had the remains of a human, and we had the remains of a dog, all buried in this shallow grave.
This person took Julia's life and took her most beloved friend's life. And I think that's especially sickening.
Well, I was at work, and I got a text message from Julia's sister. And she was like, hey, can you talk? So I got up right away, and I called her, and she was like, they found Julia. And I was like, where? Well, they found her in the desert, and they found Boogie with her as well. And I screamed, and I just fell to the floor. And all I kept thinking was, she didn't deserve that.
Julia was taking steps after the divorce to further separate herself from Dalen. And from my standpoint, I know the power dynamics of a relationship, especially if a female is breaking off the relationship, that can trigger violence. And if she's standing up for herself and drawing a line in the sand and saying, enough's enough and I'm moving on with my life, in my mind, as a prosecutor, I know that's a very dangerous time for her.
In accordance with the deal brokered by prosecutors, Dalen Ware pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives a sentence of 15 years to life.
15 years is not enough. But you know what? He will rot in hell. Because somebody with that kind of anger, and that kind of hate, and that kind of evil, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Julia's friends and family hang on to every moment they can.
I just miss her caring nature. She just wants to see the good in everybody. And I think ultimately that's what led her to her fate.
I can close my eyes and I can see her smile and I can see her laughter, and she would light up a room. Julia left a mark.
My dog's never been around the beach or the water. He's enjoying San Diego.
For Chanel, one of their final moments together stands out.
Come on. It's okay.
The summer before Julia went missing, when they walked their dogs on the beach in San Diego and spent hours enjoying each other's company.
Julia never liked taking pictures of herself, and I was always the camera person. I had came to San Diego and we were going shopping, and I was like, let's take a selfie together. And she was like, nuh-uh, you're the Miss Glam girl, I'm not the glam girl. And I was like, take a picture. And she was like, all right. And we took this picture together. Yeah, that was my buddy.